Welcome to our live stream. You can see already we have a guest, which is awesome. That's Jan right over here. Philip, co-host, is down here. My name is Susan, and we run the Neogenian Oculus, which is focusing on all things Neogenian. Welcome to anybody who's new. I think I saw one new name in there, Parasolo. If you're new, welcome. We do live streams and videos basically focusing on all Neogenian content. So if you are a Neogenian, welcome, and that's wonderful. But if you aren't, that's fine. Just feel free to ask questions and enjoy the community. It's a really great group of people. And tonight we are going
we have a lot of fun too.
We do have fun. We've just been in Zoom together talking for half an hour, having a really good time. So what we're doing tonight is continuing kind of what we've been doing for the last 3 live streams, which is focusing on hyper awareness and more to the point on the analog all and understanding what the analog all is. There's a lot of terminology that's out there, and one of the reasons Jan is here tonight is we were both talking to Jan the other night talking about this stuff, and we mentioned that Philip had come up with the idea of coming at this through Maslow's hierarchy. Basically, where does the hyper awareness and analog all of that information sit on Maslow's hierarchy? And I thought that was brilliant because there's graphics that we're going to show, and I love visuals, so I think that might help. And we were talking to Jan about it, and Jan said, can I get in on this? And we said, yes, you can. Jan is going to act as someone who's working to understand all the terms and how they fit together. So in place,
I have so many questions.
Yes, exactly. So Jan's coming with the questions, and hopefully through our discussion, it will also help everybody out there. And I can see Morg is already in here. Hi, Morgan. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody. I always forget to say this, and Philip always does it, but thank you to everybody who super chats. And we love it when people join our channel. It's like $24, I think, for a year, and you get to come to our member live streams, which we are having after this one. We always have one at the end of the month, and I've already put the link up.
If you like and subscribe, if you haven't,
please like and subscribe. And also, it's awesome when people gift memberships so that somebody who doesn't have one can come to our member streams too. Did I cover everything, Philip?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay, so hi Charlotte, thanks for coming. And Angela and Nanu and Zeus and Sam and Outlier. Did I miss anybody? There's people up here. I saw the new person, Parasolo. I don't know if you're new, but please feel free to ask questions. And let's just get right into it, I guess. So the idea, thanks for saying it was a cool idea. It was Philip's idea. So what we're doing is I'm going to show Maslow's hierarchy. Oh, and Jan, you mentioned that in your studying sociology, and you said that Maslow's hierarchy appeared in a couple of your classes, right?
Yeah, quite a few. So I'm majoring in sociology. I'm working towards my bachelor's degree in specifying in research. But so far in like just the very beginning courses, Maslow's hierarchy, just at its basics, comes up quite a bit. And I even used it in a paper that I wrote to argue on behalf of universal basic income while trying to add some Neogenian flair to emphasize everybody's like the basic Maslow's hierarchy should be met so that we could then focus on the top tier, which is like the transcendence.
That's awesome. And Angela, don't worry, I'm going to actually show graphics, which was one of the reasons why I love this idea. But first I have to ask you, Jan, are you lagging? Because does that happen?
I feel like I am.
Yeah, you're
I don't know why.
behind. Is Jan's video behind? Because Philip looks real time to me. Let me know if, and is there something you can do about it if that's happening?
I'm trying, so
Okay.
just let me fiddle with that a bit.
Yeah, you're an expert.
And,
I am.
Angela, don't worry about it being new to you. I wanted to mention, I see a couple of you have said that this is a cool idea or a fun idea.
Yeah.
And the reason that it came to me, I was talking to Susan about one of our last live streams, or maybe it was one of our Nexus Academy sessions that we do in Discord on Sundays. Somebody had asked the question, is everybody's analog all the same? And don't worry if you don't know what the analog all is, or if that's a little less familiar to you, because we're going to talk about that in a bit. But we talked about how ideally it should be the same for everybody, but people may be at a different level of progress. And so that kind of got me to thinking about what somebody's level of progress would look like, or what personal struggles factor into that. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs delves into like all of your needs that you need to achieve, and it kind of goes up. Susan will pull up the graphic before too long. And so I thought it would be good to focus on that, but look beyond Maslow's at all of the transcendent stuff that we're going to get into. And we have information from some of Morg's books. And I thought it was really fascinating.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to like this. And hello, Elise. Elise is one of our moderators. Thank you so much for being here. And okay, so where in Morg's books the Maslow's hierarchy appears is in Teleocracy. And there's actually a, on page 68, Morg put in the extended hierarchy. Don't worry if you can't see it, because I actually have the whole thing, which I'm going to show now. So let me just find it. This is just, it's going to cover the whole screen, you guys. I want to make it big so everybody can see this. So just so you guys are aware, nobody can see us right now. All right. This is, I just grabbed this from Wikipedia. And the graphic is by, I put that at the bottom, Hamish Crocker, just to give it the shout out. This is the basic triangle of, it's like a step triangle of needs. And it's really pretty self-explanatory. You can see on the bottom, physiological needs, things that you absolutely have to have. I mean, you need air and water and food and shelter and clothing, etc. Above that is safety, which is like personal health, well-being. You need a financial security. Above that, love and belonging, where you have like a network of people, family and friends and community, and your like partner or partners, group belonging. Above that is esteem, which is your confidence, your self-respect and respect from others, your getting achievements. And above that is is what Maslow has as self-actualization. Now I'm going to go to the extended one, because this was the sort of a simplified one. So let me
just really quick before you do that.
Yeah.
Angela said I did a member milestone chat. Don't know if you saw it. And I scrolled up. Angela has been a member for 15 months and said, enjoying the streams and everything you mods do. And we appreciate that. And I'm glad that you enjoy this topic. And also, Jan, your video looks much better. You're not lagging anymore.
Yes.
Good. Yeah.
Yes, you look good. I had the thing on the screen. Yes, thank you, Angela. And we're so happy to hear from you guys that you like what we do. And also because we do this for you. And if you have questions or suggestions, things you want us to do, please, let us know, because that's the whole purpose of this. Okay, let me just grab this. Oh, Zeus said it's vaguely familiar. You like the details. Well, wait, we're going to show you more, because what Morg actually has in the book is the extended hierarchy, and that is this one. Okay, I actually made this myself, this diagram, and I'm very proud of it. And I showed it to Jan, and Jan said I could have done that in like 5 minutes. Like literally, it took me an hour. But anyway, I was proud of myself. You can see on here that it has the same bottom four, which we don't need to go through again. But you can see that they're now, what was called self-actualization is now divided into cognitive needs on the bottom of that top part of the triangle. Then aesthetic needs above that now there's one just called self-actualization. And above that is transcendence. So on the little bracket says that's the extended part of the hierarchy. And then on the left, you'll see that there's two arrows. One on the bottom is pointing down. Those are deficiency needs, meaning these are things that you lack. And once you have them met, you don't need to bother with them anymore. The top
And
four.
also, since you say that, the other night we were talking about that, and we were talking about how it's not necessarily linear, where you have to achieve like all of one tier to get to the next tier. Like you can have sections of those tiers.
Yeah, that's kind of like the disclaimer part, which we'll get to in a second, because that's a really good point. It's not as cut and dried, is really what you're saying. It's not like you just achieve you master one step and then you move to the next one. And I don't know whether, I don't think he meant it to be that cut and dried, but I think that that's definitely something that you have to keep in mind. Let me put this
Question.
Whoops. Yep, hang on. Yep.
Advocating on behalf of the masses that do not know about this, why is hyper-awareness a need?
Oh, okay. Let's wait until we get up there. Okay.
Okay.
And don't forget that. Thank you. Thank you so much for the graphics thing. I like graphics. I like things that give me visuals, because it immediately gives me something to grab onto, and I know how to start then thinking about it and organizing it and making sense of it. So let me put this one back up, the extended one. All right, here it is. So the top four on Maslow's extended hierarchy are the being needs, also known as like the growth needs. These are things that you continue to work on. I don't think you can actually get too much of those things. Whereas the bottom ones, like I said, the deficiency ones, once you have them and you're covered and all of those things are met, it's not something you continue to work on. Whereas
so they're finite, whereas
kind of, yeah. Once
the other is like,
yeah. Once those are met, they're met. That's why they're called deficiency ones. The being and growth ones are ones that allow you to continue to grow and expand, and I don't think there's a limit to that. So and this is what we're working toward, because we're not really focusing on what all the different levels of Maslow is. If you guys want to do that some other day, we can. But what we're really trying to get to is, based on what the title of our live stream is, what's beyond that. Yes. And really what that means is, what is the transcendence, the top one, breakdown into? And this is all in Teleocracy, by the way, which in the Nexus class, we've just started Cosmogenesis. Teleocracy is the book after we finish this. There's no need to read ahead. We'll get to it eventually, but I just thought Philip's idea of bringing this in now was so good to augment what we've been talking about in terms of all of these complicated terms. And this will help, I hope, to cement some of those things, along with all the questions that Jan is about to bring in. And I know I'm talking fast, but I want to get to the good stuff. So let me bring up the Neogenian transcendent step. So if you think of the top of Maslow's extended hierarchy, which was transcendence, just that one pink one. Now
it was self-actualization, wasn't it?
No, that was self-actualization is the top.
The extended one, you mean?
Yeah, on the extent. I thought I said that. On the top of the extended, Maslow's extended hierarchy was a pink transcendent step. This is that level broken down into 3 steps. As you can see, the blue on the bottom says developing the analog all. The one above it says helping others to self-actualize. And then at the top, it's becoming hyper-aware. And then right at the top, that little point that says hyper-awareness, that's the pinnacle.
The very pinnacle.
That's the very pinnacle. So this is what we're actually talking about. And when you recognize that the analog all, the absolute, all awareness, all of those terms we've been talking about, now that you've seen this whole triangle, you know where this fits. This is way, way at the top. And the bottom step of this is developing the analog all. So now let me just close this. If you ever want me to open it again, you can take another look at it. Let me know, but let me just close it so that now we can actually start talking. Yes, I love that we're reading all the books too, and I'm so excited that we're doing Cosmogenesis. That's tomorrow, actually. Put a plug in for that. Mark.
Are you just starting it tomorrow?
Yeah, no, we started last week. I started it, but we didn't get very far. We didn't get far. And it's Mark's class tomorrow. So, guys, here we are.
I can tell that Jan was itching to ask a question.
Yes. What would you want it? What was the one you asked about hyper-awareness? Now that we've seen everything.
So why is hyper-awareness a need?
It is not a need the way the deficiency needs are. It is something that you need in order to exist. It is one of the being and growth steps, and it is what is going to change the world. What is going to move us from this paradigm of like we're just, oh, hi, Mark. I'm sorry. Hi, Mark. Be there or be square. Mark is another one of our moderators, so it's good to see you here. So hyper-awareness is actually the goal that we as Neogenians are striving toward. It is the pinnacle of the pyramid, but also from the fact that we need hyper-awareness in order to move from this world of where we're just thinking about ourselves, and it's very I don't want to say selfish, but it's just very and maybe possibly family oriented, but
like
also
overly individualistic in a sense.
Very individualistic, but also more comes in with, I'm going to read your thing in a second, but also it's what's going to move us out of this world of an incorrect understanding of reality that leads us to do the things that we do, or not us, but a lot of the world, based on the way they think reality is. Basically, so many people think this world isn't that important. It's the afterlife that matters, pleasing God and getting to heaven, for example, and the effect that has, that belief system, or that one, there's many other different ones as well, but what that does to how we as a collective live, what we do. So understanding or having hyper-awareness, understanding the absolute, immediately changes your perspective. You are now in a different paradigm. It really flips you from what you thought was the goal of for yourself and what you maybe thought others in the world should be doing.
And I think in one of our last live streams, we talked about hyper-awareness being a stepping stone to our other goals. Like once we've achieved that, then it almost sort of has like a domino effect of us being able to achieve our other goals of the Neogenian system.
Yeah. Some new people came in too. So hello. Hi, Ryan. Hi, Spectral. Hi, Joanna. I don't think I said hi to you earlier. So yes, Jan is with us today. Jan is acting as a foil, kind of as a springboard. So Jan's going to come out with all these questions, which will then allow us to talk about it and allow you guys to join in.
Mm-hmm. And you guys are welcome to put questions in the comments as well.
Yeah, everything we're doing is to try to clarify and deepen people's understanding of the terms that we use a lot.
Real quick, Morg said it's not a need for individual survival. It's needed to thrive collectively. So it's then it would be like a collective need.
Yeah, that's good. I'm sorry, I said I would read that, and I forgot.
So then would it be correct, or would it be in the ballpark to say that hyper-awareness like sort of encompasses the analog all and the analog I?
Okay, so good comments. So let's start with the analog I, which is the mental model that we have of ourself. In fact, I
Mhm.
still have it. I didn't take the look. I have this little graphic. Jan, you won't
Oh,
be able
another
to.
graphic.
This is an old one from last week. I didn't take it down. This is the one that with the little guy in the bottom corner, Philip, with the little thought bubble,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
put the three little blue figures inside it. This is the analog eye. This is a representation, a mental model that you have of yourself, and you can then it allows you to
Kind of
self-reflect.
looks like Carl Jung a little bit.
Yeah, kind of. So that the analog eye, we all have it. We all, whether you know it or not, because you use it all the time, to be able to put yourself in different situations, to be able to think about yourself and make decisions. It's absolutely necessary. The analog all, which you weren't here for last week, but we really got into that, not last week, but last time. We really talked about it. The analog all is the mental model, just like the analog I, except that instead of just you, it is the mental model of the absolute, and the absolute is everything that exists. And I'm gonna bring out my. I know, it makes Philip.
We love that, though. No, we love it.
It is very handy. It's very handy. The absolute is depicted in this little silly little thing, everything that exists. So it accounts for the frequency domain, which includes, of course, the eternal source that always exists, and it accounts for the holos, the space-time, physical cosmos.
So
And
all
why
of
don't-
that thing is the absolute.
This represents the absolute on a like a physical model of it, and the analog all, yeah, the wheel, I know, it's a stupid little wheel, but the analog all is the mental representation, the mental model you have of the absolute. And when I say that, I don't mean a visual of this. I mean whatever kind of mental visual you can use to represent this. This is just how you do it on paper.
Why don't you pull up that third triangle again so we can see where the development of the analog all
Okay.
in approaching hyper-awareness.
So developing the analog all is here. Let me go back to the other one just real quick. Here's the extended hierarchy. You can see right at the top, the purple, the pinkish one, transcendence, okay? So here, this entire triangle is that triangle divided into three. The bottom is developing the analog all. So that is what you're going to do when you hit this transcendence level of Maslow's hierarchy, right? In terms of Maslow's hierarchy, this is how the Neogenian material fits into that. And basically, Moore took the Maslow's hierarchy and said, okay, when we get to this step, this is the Neogenian view of what's going on here, because obviously Maslow did not have that. For Maslow, for Maslow, it's going beyond yourself, which is true for us as well. But we have actual further steps in getting there. So I'm going to just shut this. Where is it? Okay. So the bottom one, which is developing the analog all, is what we spent a lot of time last time talking about. And I know you have more questions, Jan, but I see that Nanu wrote something. They used to say that higher stages were for older people, considering that most people spent more than 50% of their lives to satisfy the first deficient needs, then go to the other ones. Okay, we could stop and talk about that for a second. And hi, Kevin. Because Philip, you brought that up a bit with the sort of the disclaimer thing, which is that it's not accurate to look at the hierarchy and think of it in terms of, well, literally everybody would have to have the bottom one met, and then the red one, and then the orange one,
like stepping stones.
Yeah.
Like you can't have this without this bottom thing.
And if I bring up the extended hierarchy, just so you can see this, you could see by thinking about it a little bit that it wouldn't work in real life that way, because you could be and we talked about this the other night when we were talking about it. You could have your physiological needs being met very poorly. You might be extremely deficient in being able to get food.
Yeah, and that's what made me think of this in the beginning, because I was thinking of personal progress and experiencing struggle, which, by the way, our most popular live stream that we've ever done, if you look back, is on why we experience struggle. So you can go back and watch that if you need to. But it made me think of Maslow's hierarchy and the way that we progress through all of these basic needs, and then being able to transcend that into personal growth
Yeah.
and self-actualization.
Yeah. So I wouldn't, hi Twilight, I wouldn't think, it would not be accurate to say that somebody who is really struggling to meet the bottom two steps, for example, would never encounter or think about anything much near the top, because you could definitely do that. You could be very advanced in like consciousness expansion.
Nanu also said, would it change if the first ones, meaning the first levels, would be satisfied earlier in life? I always thought that we needed experience to get to the higher ones. Would it change?
See, I don't think it works like when you're little, you get your bottom one met. It's not like it goes with age, because you could be 40 years old and have lost, maybe never even really had a lot of your needs met. Mark says, stable foundations building that remains permanent in a person's life is incredibly idealized. Absolutely. So, you can actually change your situation as well, and maybe start off being really, fortunate, and then end up being homeless and having a difficult time finding food and shelter and clothing and all of that. And you may not have any kind of support system in terms of people, or you could be suffering from that, but have a very strong group of people around you who are maybe experiencing the same thing, where you get a lot of your...
Mark says not everyone enjoys a secure retirement, for instance.
Again, yes. So you could see how it's not always, well, these are met before I can even think about higher ones. So, I think we've kind of covered that, and it doesn't take too much thinking about it, I don't think.
No, it's just like an ideal list of priorities. Like it seems like,
I think
as far as Maslow himself, like his basic model.
I think, for sure, I think he went in terms of, if you didn't have anything, what would be the most important thing to start with? And of course, air. You need air, you need water, you need food, you need those things. And then once you've got that covered, what would be the next level up? And I think that's where he was going, and I think that's really reasonable.
I like that meme. This is a total aside, but I like that meme where people have drawn on how nowadays the most important tier is Wi-Fi.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's because it's, our phones are another sense now. They're another appendage. They're so important. We don't know what to do without them. But I think now that we sort of understand how that works together, we can go back to hair. Hair's
what
not
are you
important.
trying to say?
Yeah. But anyway, we'll go back to talking about the analog all, developing the analog all, and how that relates to all awareness, the absolute, hyper awareness. And I know you had questions, Jan, and I agree with you, Mark. We get looped back sometimes. Absolutely. So, we're covering different levels. I'm just going to say one more thing about it. I think that it just in general, in terms of the pyramid, it's probably thought that you're not going to be able to expend a lot of your time and effort into the really high order ones if you don't have food. if you don't have shelter. You need those things, and you'll be spending time and effort to seek them out for sure. So I think that's probably where how that relates. So Jan, anyway, here. I think we're ready for the big discussion.
Right. So just confirming like hyper awareness is like the very like pinnacle at the top of like what Neogenian is aspiring to achieve for the collective.
Yeah,
Um
individually and the collective.
when we use these and you've probably already answered this and spent time on this, but just to like go back over it again, sometimes when I try to describe things that are like when I'm trying to encompass like everybody and me and all of this stuff, and I think hyper awareness, I feel like sometimes I get mixed up and I use terms interchangeably, such as analog all and all awareness. Um,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
or or also sometimes I get things mixed up, such as like the Genesis singularity versus the absolute. So like all these terms kind of seem to describe something that's just more than, one thing. Like how do I keep that straight?
Yeah,
Now, if I could take
you
a
go.
piece of that,
You
well, I
go.
was just going to start with the first piece of that, of what you mentioned with all awareness and the analog all. Susan, you and I were talking. I don't know if that was, we talked so much, I don't remember which night it was, but did we want to clarify what we were talking about in terms of the analog I being tied with self awareness and the analog all being tied with all awareness?
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a good point. Do you want to talk about, you go for it?
Well, I can't remember exactly where we went with the conversation because we were hashing out these terms before we got to the
Yeah.
live stream. And Jan is right. There's so many terms. I think you described it, Susan, as being kind of similar to one another, but in the same ballpark. And by the way, everybody put in the comments a few weeks ago, we mentioned to make flashcards and like flowcharts and stuff and see if that would help you. If anybody has done that and if it has helped you, definitely let us know in the comments. But I know for me, I also had a brief period where all awareness was kind of tricky and confusing for me as well. But when you described it to me that way, Susan, as all awareness of having that awareness of the analog all of everything that exists, all of reality, that made sense to me in comparing it with the analog I and having that sense of self awareness.
Yeah, okay. And first, thank you, Ryan. That is really generous and we appreciate it. That's so sweet. Thank you so much. That was a super chat in case you missed it, Philip. So I agree that the terminology, and I'm glad Jan brought that up because it's only hit me fairly recently that it's something. Sometimes I think we've talked about this, we've covered it, and now we can't talk about it again. And then we have somebody come in like Twyla who says, I'm, you're lost. And I understand that. I think we sometimes think once we've covered something, well, that's it. Now we can't talk about that again. We've covered it, but these terms can be so difficult to grasp.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just saying, oh, this is the difference between a cup and a glass, and you can show them and then you're kind of done. These terms are complex and they're new and
I feel like we've been doing a really good job with our last few live streams of approaching these terms and concepts from different angles.
Yeah.
So we're still discussing the same things, but like today we're approaching it from Maslow's hierarchy and going beyond that.
Yeah.
Whereas before we had different examples and different graphics. And I think people find that helpful.
I think it is important to do that because the more you use the terms, it's like with anything that you're learning, the more you use it, a word, and it forces you to understand what that means, what that concept means, the more you will get that to sort of solidify within you. And then when you learn a different term and then you learn how those things are related, like the analog all and the absolute, for example, until you have that, they're just words. And like Jan said, you might think they're interchangeable. You might think that they're synonyms because they sound close. And like I told you guys earlier, I'm really guilty. I just make up words when I need them. And I know what it means, and people who are possibly using like the analog all and the absolute and all awareness interchangeably, in your head what you're referring to, but other people have a different version, which is why it's so important that we do
Yeah.
spend time on this. So,
Well,
And
this is what
how
kind of, but oh, sorry, Philip.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know how people say that when you're learning a new language, it helps to discuss or use that language with other people.
yeah,
That's kind of what I think of with this stuff because we're describing the language of mind and of consciousness. And really, I've even had better understandings by having discussions with the audience because when they give their questions, like about should the analog all ideally be the same for everyone, that
right.
kind of makes you stop and
It
think. And
does.
I find that helpful.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
this brings me into like the next important series of questions because like I'm a very visual thinker. I'm a very intuitive thinker. So when I understand a concept, it's like with a feeling and it's not really formed into a vocabulary, like a perfect vocabulary that would describe what it is I'm trying to convey. So it's like when I start to describe hyper awareness to other people, it's hard to find the right words to use it. So my most important question that's been on my mind is what is it like to experience hyper-awareness? Like never mind like what it is, what does it feel like? Because
Yeah.
the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is something like a spiritual experience. And I think that's what most people sort of like go to when you think of hyper awareness, you think of something like spiritual. And if you are asked to describe a spiritual experience, I think it's easier to find a certain like common vocabulary with words that are fairly interchangeable and flexible to get your point across. But when you're trying to like describe the experience of hyper awareness, like where it's a very specific thing, like what is it for you to experience hyper aware? Like what is it like?
That's such a great question. I'm glad you asked that because just by asking that question and having the discussion that we're going to have, and hopefully people will join in and say what they think. Hi, Lee, and also hi, Lyra. Nice to see you. And Lee, I hope you're feeling a lot better by now. I know you've really been through it. Okay, so really, the reason this is a really good question is because I don't, yeah, and Twilight said you nailed it. I personally would never, given the way I think about hyper awareness, I would not say it that way. What does it feel like? Because for me, hyper awareness is a state that you achieve. And I know that can be confusing if you're thinking in terms of it has to feel like something. What does that mean when you say you achieve it?
Right.
So,
Or like is it something you do?
right, is it
Like
something
is
you
it an
do?
action?
Um, so, and Philip, I want to hear what you're going to say too
Yeah.
about this. This isn't something I have articulated a lot, so I might stumble a little bit. But hopefully, in having us talk about it, you, Jan, will get a better grasp of what we think of it, and then hopefully everybody else will as well. So I don't think of it as something that I'm going to feel necessarily. I think of it as a perspective. I think of it as having a new perspective on reality that I didn't have before.
Mhm.
So, and I'm just making this up right now. Think, because I'm not good at on the spot things, but think of it. Think that you're a person and you're like from way ever long time ago, ancient history time, and I'm sure they're a lot smarter than we give them credit for, but you're sitting around and you think, we're talking about hyper awareness, Lyra. Basically, a lot of the concepts we've been talking about before, all awareness, the analog all, developing an analog all, and hyper awareness. So imagine that you don't know how the reality operates. You don't know really what stars are. You're just sitting outside and you can see the night sky. You can see, the planet. You don't even really necessarily know that it's a planet that you're on. You don't know. Imagine what that perspective must be like. There's a lot of questions. It's a very limited perspective on understanding reality.
Kind of like Plato's cave sort of stuff.
Maybe, but I'm not even thinking along those lines at all. I'm just thinking about not understanding much except what's in front of you, what you can see, kind of. Mm-hmm. But then imagine that somebody comes along and explains to you that those stars and planets that you can see up there, that you are on one of those, and it's a sphere, and it's rotating, and it's also going around the sun, and you have just gotten a lot more information on reality. What does that do for your perspective now? You've gone from, I don't know what's happening, I can only see what I see, and I can maybe wonder what is causing things to happen, and I can maybe think that there must be some entity out there doing some things if it rains or there's lightning, but you really don't know for sure. But somebody comes along and explains a lot to you. How do you, like, your thing is, well, how do I feel now? Whereas I'm thinking, what's my perspective now? Mm-hmm. And hyper-awareness to me is a perspective that I have now from having all this knowledge.
And I quickly, sorry.
Yeah, no. Go on, Jen.
Is it something, so then that's kind of like where my next wonder is the hyper-awareness sort of perspective. Is that something that you can naturally come to, or is it something that has to be taught to you?
Hi, Laura. That's a really good question. And also, hi, William.
Didn't we have that question in one of the last live streams? Where is it something that is taught or something that is worked on from the self or by one individual?
Okay, so
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of a different thing.
Obviously, it can be worked out rationally and with other components. Remember that the three components to get to hyper-awareness is metacognition, concept networking, and phenomenological experience. So if you can be very rational, figure things out, have some strong experience, phenomenological experience, and have that come together. For me, I learned this information, thank goodness. But I don't think you could say that it has to be taught, because where did it first come from? Somebody had to have figured that out, or experienced it, and then spoke to others about it. I think it's becomes a collective, more of a collective thing, especially with phenomenological experience. But what did people think about what I said, by the way, about it being a perspective? Oh, actually, people are talking.
I had some things to add to that. So when you asked, what does it feel like being hyper aware? While Susan was talking, I was kind of thinking about it from a different approach, because I don't know if I would say it would be inaccurate to use the word feel hyper aware. But the way I described it the other night of my understanding of hyper awareness is an expanded understanding, an extremely expanded understanding, or heightened consciousness. And we use words like heightened, but when we juxtapose that with consciousness, what does that mean? Heightened consciousness? Because when you say heightened seems like a word of measurement, of higher. But I always go back to that same quote. I know I've said it in so many different live streams, but I always say a mind expanded beyond its old dimensions can never return to those old dimensions. Yeah. And I can never remember who says it. But
we go through this every time. Who did say that?
Mark always tells me in the but it makes me think of that analogy of trying to squeeze the toothpaste back into the tube. You can't do it. And when you have that expanded understanding, it's something that you grok, you fully understand it. It's a part of you. You
Yeah.
have access to that. And I think that can make you feel a certain way because when you have that new perspective of all awareness, of the analog all, of everything, the absolute, that gives you a perspective and that can make you feel maybe profound in some way. But
Maybe terrified.
maybe terrified of all the things that we don't know in terms of specifics. But when we say how do you feel hyper aware, I think that can kind of play into it. But I would describe it as an extremely expanded understanding. But I love the way that you put it as well, Susan, and I think that's also accurate. I think sometimes the words that we use, Morg said earlier, fun fact, all words are
Yeah.
made up.
Yeah, I make
Which
up
is
words all the time.
true.
They're all made up.
Yeah.
And also, you have to keep,
Yeah.
I was going to say, also, you have to keep in mind that we're trying to describe things that are new concepts. We're trying to describe things that are difficult to understand. And so that's why I love when people ask questions in our comments when they come to our live streams, because it helps me see it from a different perspective.
Yeah. It is Emerson. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Emerson.
Someday I'll have that stuck in my head.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah. So that was. I hope that helped to sort of get an idea of it. What else? What other questions do you have? I can't believe it's already
just the last thought I have, I think, is just to kind of like add to everything because Susan, you were kind of talking about this sort of concept of like, well, if you're sitting on a planet but you don't know it's a planet, you're just kind of in your own world. I'm kind of maybe trying to use the idea of the mirror test to maybe describe how it would be like coming into a new perspective. Like, and never mind the test itself. It's like if I had that moment where I'm looking in the mirror and I suddenly have that profound, like, aha, that's not another person, that's me. Like, do you think maybe it would be like that, achieving hyper awareness, but obviously like way more like advanced?
Because that's like you're achieving your self-awareness at a very basic level.
Yeah, I think it's a very similar example, just like just on a different level. So I actually really like that. And then once you know that will change your perspective now, right? Now you have something that you didn't have before. And it's not just a piece of knowledge like, oh, I learned that, when did some major event happen, when the Pilgrims landed. I don't even know when the Pilgrims landed, but same thing. It's not like that. This is something that it's not just knowing a fact about something. This is knowing something that adds to your understanding of reality.
And it's an awareness that's now a part of you.
A part of you, yes. And you don't lose
perspective be a good word to kind of like anchor to a little bit when you're talking about hyper awareness? Like it's describing it more of like a certain like extended perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of saying it. It's something. Yeah, Morg said the mirror test is a good example. Yeah, it's like I like what Philip just said, that it's now a part of you. It's gaining something that now becomes part of you. But like I said, not just like adding a new fact that you learned. That's not the same thing.
So Ryan Roy also asked a question, and Ryan said, do you think hyper-awareness is the default setting once your avatar expires and returns back to the frequency domain?
Good question. Philip, do you want to take that?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. I need to read the reading again. Do you think hyper-awareness is the default setting once your avatar expires and returns back to the frequency domain? Do you mean like after you die? Or like
if you're in the death current?
Yeah, because we talked about that in our last live stream. And if you're referring to after this physical body dies, like after Philip Shope dies or whatever, am I still hyper aware? And we talked about that and we said probably so. And it's just that you are more likely to achieve that faster in your next lifetime or realize it more easily in your next lifetime.
but it's not the default setting from the get-go, because
Yeah.
it's something that you need to achieve at a certain point. Morg said, yes, that works. This is why we have the triadic perspective. Is what are you referring to? Is that to Ryan's question or to something that Jan said? But once you have achieved hyper awareness, I agree with what Philip said, and we did talk about this last time, I'm pretty sure, that you have it, you just don't know it in your avatar. You have to hopefully regain it in the current lifetime that you're in, the current localization, which I really...
Like you're not going to be relocalized and start off as a hyper aware infant or anything.
Yeah. Although I think that I think it will be easier to regain that, to grasp that, the stronger you have, unless perhaps you're in a life that's very, very difficult, which maybe you're struggling a lot and you just don't have the means ever to really think about anything other. But other than that, I would say that because we know it's part of us. It's sort of like when you learn something that you have that feeling like you've always known it. I think that's one of those things. It's like, oh, why didn't I get this sooner? Like, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
It makes so
I mean,
much
I would
sense to me.
describe it. I kind of feel like sometimes, like, because I just like my brain just likes to describe things and feelings. It's almost like you come back to your childhood home, but like you've never seen it before, but like you come back to it and you're like, this is where I'm from. Like this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
really natural.
Going back to what Jan said, Morg was responding when you asked if it was a perspective. Morg said, yes, that works, which is why we have the triadic perspective, if we could call it a perspective.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, Lee, thank you for the super chat. And Lee said, is it still hyper awareness if the majority of the self-aware population will or has achieved it during that era, or is it a common sense?
Common sense ain't common.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that pops in my head.
Okay, so are you saying that once the majority...
He responded to it, and he said, I'm wondering if hyper-awareness in general is a state of mind beyond just the common or mundane.
If hyper-awareness in general... I would say that it's a perspective that is at the moment not at all common. And, that is... Oh, that's another really good thing. We have to hurry up.
I think for some minds, it's probably just comes a lot easier. And it's like, well, yeah, didn't you know? Like,
But remember the question that someone had, I don't know, last one or the one before, which is maybe the first one. How many people are hyper aware? How many people do you know who understand the absolute like this?
And the answer is not very many.
Not a lot.
I think I do.
Here? I
have a somewhat of a level of confidence to say, I think I do. But I don't know how to justify that, or there's no really method of measurement to prove or show that, or actually,
how. So let's talk about, rather than hyper awareness, let's talk about the analog all, the development of the analog all, which is, remember, here's the transcendent steps, the bottom of these three, and it's like super important, can't be over stressed, that before we think about hyper awareness, we definitely want to work on that, getting the analog all. And the analog all is the mental model of the absolute, which is the understanding of what the absolute is. So, okay, all awareness is more widespread. Hyper awareness is quite rare. Yeah. Okay. So, Morg, give us your definition of all awareness.
Also, before we wrap up, I wanted to say Joanna gave us a member milestone chat.
Oh,
Joanna's
nice.
been a member for 42 months and says, always learning, always growing here and beyond. Thank you for
Aw,
the support,
thank
Joanna.
you. That's a
And
long
that's why we
time.
do what we
That's
do.
nice.
Yep, yep. Thank you. All awareness is more. I want to hear what the. Oh, yes, I can show you this again, Twilight. So one more time, because I just love this thing. Everybody should make one. This was Morg's.
It looks like it should be a Christmas ornament.
I was struggling. Yeah, I could make them as Christmas ornaments. I was struggling to make a like to just on a piece of paper just a depiction of the absolute. And Morg is the one who said you really need to have it where the other side is the holos, and then that's how this came to be. So the thanks, Kevin. The absolute, everything that exists. We want something that represents everything that exists. So we know that there's a frequency domain, and we know that the eternal part of that is the source, what we call the source, an awareness of the all. Okay, so an awareness of the all. So is that an awareness of the absolute? Is all awareness the same thing as a deep understanding of the absolute? Because we had this discussion earlier.
That's why the other night when we were talking, we talked about self-awareness
Yes.
being an awareness of the analog I,
Yes.
and all awareness being an awareness of the analog all.
And I
Well,
said,
Susan, didn't you ask me last night? Sorry to cut off, but
That's
you
okay.
asked me, Jan, what do you think the absolute is? And like my first thought was like, oh, the Genesis singularity.
Right. Another good point. Hi, Chris. So
thank you, Laura, for 36
which is not, which it's not.
Yeah. Oh, and yes. Thank you, Laura. Okay. Wow. You know what? We have our I'm gonna answer that, but we have our members stream in a few minutes, and everybody hop over there and we will continue to talk about this. Okay. Morg said, okay, but if self-awareness is the awareness of us as a separate individual, all awareness is the awareness of all reality as a holistic unity. See, that's slightly different.
So not just other
that is
like
not.
people, but like the matter of the universe and everything.
So this is really good, because when Philip and I were talking about this, it was okay. So is all awareness the same thing as an understanding of the absolute, which it's not, and this, according to Morg, and so this is good to know. Self-awareness is all awareness is the awareness of all reality as a holistic unit, but it's okay. So it's the beginning to become conscious of the absolute as us. See, these terms, some of them are so subtly different, but what Jan just said a second ago, and I just want to cover this one before we leave, is what was it? The absolute, you said, and the Genesis singularity, and how do they relate?
Yeah, you're like, what do you think of when you think of the word absolute? And I'm like, the first thing my brain goes to is the Genesis singularity.
Yeah, in fact, what you said was the moment when we are all in symmetry, which is the Genesis singularity. So, and what I said was, and this is to answer what Philip just said a second ago, in terms of these terms, a lot of them, the all awareness and the analog all and the absolute, they're kind of lumped together here. The Genesis singularity is over here in a way. It's much easier to understand what that is by itself, because it's a particular moment. It's a particular situation where the only thing that exists is the source. And there is no holos. There's no, we are all in perfect symmetry, all zetas. And there's no, it's like before the Big Bang, that moment where all that exists is the frequency domain, but specifically the source. And, and so that's a very different concept. Understanding the Genesis singularity, once it's explained, you're like, oh, that's what that is. And you can put that aside, kind of like, yes, we do. Angela, we'll go back to doing a glossary. But once you have the Genesis singularity down, it's that specific situation. But all these other terms are very subtly related. And that is, I think, the thing that we've really been focusing on, trying to sift through and make more concrete. So the absolute is, yes, we know more. We just went over that. The absolute is all of reality. It's all of this. And the Genesis singular is a state where it's just this. It's the end of one of the huge
So it's just an event.
Cycles. Yeah, it's the end of one cosmic cycle right before the next one begins. A particular situation in the existence as a whole. Whereas all the other things are terms that talk about levels of consciousness and the mental models of things. It's a little bit more complex, a little trickier to nail those down, which is what we've been doing. And let us know if we've helped you today. I hope.
Yeah, definitely feel free to leave comments and questions, because we can do more of these live streams.
Yeah, this conversation has definitely helped me. It's sometimes I feel like I understand things really well, like within our system, and then when you get to talking about it, you kind of have these moments of like, oh shit, I don't actually know that as well as I think I do. And I think it's should be normalized to have those sort of like, oh crap moments, and not like take yourself too seriously or like feel bad about it, and just like
absolutely
just be open to the conversation.
Yeah. Which is why I think it's so great that you came on. It was like the perfect timing for you to come on and like have this conversation, because listening to that and then being able to ask questions at the same time really helps people to solidify this stuff. I just want to say thank you
for providing context.
Yes. And I know I read it 5 minutes late, but thank you, Sunny Enough. I love your name. And we really appreciate your super chat. Thank you. This was a really fun stream. I was looking forward to it because I knew Jan would be on too. And it really, I think, livened things up. And you did say you would come back a little more often now.
I would like to, if you will have me, I would like to come back a little more often.
That's great.
My YouTube channel isn't going anywhere. However, I'm just not really as motivated to do solo projects like I used to be. I would rather be into situations where it's having conversations with other people. So just, I'm not quitting or anything. It's just like I'd rather prioritize group conversation. So yeah, if you'll have me, I'll come.
I think that's great. And everybody, are you gonna come over to our member stream too, please? Or do you have to? Oh, good. Okay.
And then also don't forget, tomorrow is the Neogenian, the Nexus Academy in the Citadel on Discord. Yeah. And Mark is leading that one. And then on Monday, Morg will be going live on YouTube. So you can find that, Morg Official on YouTube. And everybody who's a member, feel free to stop by and come over to our member stream right after this one.
Yes, thank you. And I'm glad it's helping you, Halo. I'm seeing so many great comments from people. It's really heartening to know that whatever it is that we come on and talk about, that you guys are getting, you can replay it, JP, but that you're getting something out of it, that, because we do spend time meeting before live streams, like a whole bunch of nights, and talking and working things through, trying to come up with the best way of presenting things. And Philip, I think your idea was great with Maslow's hierarchy. So
I'll try to think of a few more.
Oh, hi, Mr. Saturn, and welcome. Unfortunately, we're just ending, and don't worry to whoever just said that. JP, that you have to replay it. Don't worry, it's going to be there. So, all right, we are going to say good night, but in a few minutes we will pop in. The link is already up, and it's they've changed where things are. It's in the posts. In the post section right at the top. Our YouTube page. Yeah, and you'll find the link to the members. So yeah, thank you, and we'll see you there or tomorrow. And thank you, Pollination. Awesome. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
And dismiss.